What's up, guys? DRock1992 here. For this next video, I'm going to be going over the films that came out in the month of October. I know it's late and all that. Today's the 8th of November, but haven't had a lot of time because of homework and things like that. I've been very busy. But I'm going to get into the releases of October. I'll preview what's coming up in November. So without further ado, here we go. And we got the first movie here, Bridge of Spies. Bridge of Spies came out October 4th, and it is the latest Steven Spielberg directed film. And it stars Tom Hanks in the lead role. Tom Hanks lead role, Steven Spielberg director. You know how those two have paired up before. They gave us Saving Private Ryan, which is, I think, my favorite Spielberg movie of all time. I love Saving Private Ryan. Catch Me If You Can. They gave us that movie. I really like Catch Me If You Can too. That's a good movie. I think they gave us another one, The Terminal. I never watched that one, but didn't get to see Bridge of Spies in theaters. I've heard good things about it, though. The money, though, it hasn't made a lot of money. Not a ton. $40 million budget, and it made $71.9 million at the box office. So it did pretty good. I mean, it did decently. Not great. And it got a 92% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is what you would expect from a Spielberg film, because like every Spielberg movie's in the 90s for Rotten Tomatoes in terms of percentage. Saving Private Ryan is too, and Catch Me If You Can. So this is the latest Steven Spielberg work, and it did well critically, okay financially. And I think it's still going in theaters, too, if I'm not mistaken. October 5th, we got the movie Goosebumps. Goosebumps is based on the children's book series way back in the day by author R.L. Stine. R.L. Stine made this incredible book series. The Goosebumps book series was so popular back in the day. And we finally get a movie about it. The main character is Jack Black. He plays R.L. Stine in the movie. And he is pretty much the main guy. A couple child actors as well. On a budget of $58 million, it's made $92.2 million. So a good profit for the movie. It's made some money. And it was brilliant to put it out in Halloween. Around Halloween, in the month of Halloween, because Goosebumps is a horror a horror type of book series and all that. And I have a lot of the Goosebumps books, and I read a lot of them back in the day. Goosebumps overall on Rotten Tomatoes has a very solid 74% rating. So a lot of critics did like it. But it definitely is more of a family film, for sure. The next movie is Burnt. Burnt stars Bradley Cooper in the main role. And this movie's about a chef who Bradley Cooper's this chef trying to come back from a previous setback and trying to make his restaurant. He has his own restaurant. He's the chef of his own restaurant, and he strives to be the best he can be. Burnt came out in limited release October 6th. It came out wide release October 30th. So far, not great numbers. $20 million budget, $14.8 million as of this point. It hasn't quite made the money. It's still out, so it's going to exceed $20 million, I can imagine. But I don't think it's going to make a lot of money. And Burnt didn't get great reviews from the critics either. On Rotten Tomatoes, a 27% rating, which is rotten. And you think with Bradley Cooper, I mean, Bradley Cooper's one of the big stars in Hollywood today. I mean, my God, he came off American Sniper, which got nominated for Best Picture last year at the Oscars. I think it was nominated for Best Picture. But anyway, I mean, it was just, that was a brilliant film. You know, American Hustle, that movie did really well a couple of years ago. But yeah, Burt just wasn't the best movie for Bradley Cooper. And we get into the next movie, which is Crimson Peak. Crimson Peak is a horror romance type movie. It is directed by, you may know him, Guillermo del Toro. He directed this film. It was released October 16th. And on a $55 million budget, it's made $69.5 million so far, which isn't too bad, and it's made some money. Made a little bit over $55 million. Crimson Peak overall on Rotten Tomatoes, a 70% rating. The actors in this film, Tom Hiddleston, you may know him as Loki in the Marvel movies. Jessica Chastain, a name that's getting a lot of recognition these days. And many others as well. So Crimson Peak is one. And that's kind of another horror type movie that, you know, that came out around Halloween, so it's kind of capitalizing on that. Next movie I'm going to talk about is Rock the Casbah. Rock the Casbah is the latest Bill Murray film. He is the lead guy in it, and it's got an all-star cast. Bruce Willis is in the film as well. Kate Hudson, Zooey Deschanel. Just a great cast, an impressive cast. And Rock the Casbah is a big box office bomb. It just didn't do well at all. On a budget of $15 million, it has only made $2.8 million. Very pathetic numbers for this film. And the reception has been terrible. 7% on Rotten Tomatoes. This movie got panned, and it's a box office bomb. I mean, I'd like to see it someday because I like Bill Murray as an actor, but it just didn't do extremely well. Another movie I'm going to talk about is Jem and the Holograms. This is based on an 80s cartoon series and a toy line. And it's about, for those of you who don't know, it's about this fictional singer, this singer forming a girl band or something like that. Jem and the Holograms, heard a lot of negative things about it. It only made like $2.2 million on a budget of $5 million. Not a big budget at all, but it has not made the money. So you can consider it a box office bomb, and it has a 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't good at all. So, a couple names in the film. Aubrey Peoples, I've heard the name. Juliette Lewis, she's been around for a while. Molly Ringwald, who was part of the Brat Pack in the 80s. Ryan Guzman, I think... No, that's Luis Guzman. I haven't heard of the Ryan Guzman. But, I mean, this movie was a failure. For sure. Not a lot of people liked it. So, the next film to talk about is the final movie in a franchise, Paranormal Activity: The Ghost Dimension. It is the 6th and final movie in the whole series of horror films. In this series of horror films. And it did not do... It made money. $10 million budget, $67.1 million. That's definitely because of the brand name that Paranormal Activity is. It's one of the better-known horror franchises of all time. It's up there with Saw, with the Saw film series, with the Scream film series. It's up there with those series, but in the Halloween and all these other series and all that. But the movie made money, but critically it only got an 11% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So it didn't... Critics didn't think it made a nice send-off to the series. The next film I'm going to be talking about is the latest Vin Diesel movie, The Last Witch Hunter. Last Witch Hunter is Vin Diesel. Michael Caine is in the movie. Michael Caine pops up in everything now. Elijah Wood, Rose Leslie. Yeah, The Last Witch Hunter is... It's a movie about, and I'm sorry I haven't been really talking about what the movies are about. I'm going to start doing that now, from what I know of them. I know, apparently The Last Witch Hunter is about this witch hunter who's eradicated the entire witch population, but there's a new threat, a new big witch that's coming out, and Vin Diesel has to team up with another witch. He has to do the unthinkable. Team up with a witch to eradicate the other witch. Or something like that. Last Witch Hunter, on a budget of $70 million, it's made $84.4 million, which isn't terrible. I mean, it's still going to make some money, but... because it's still out in theaters, but, you know... I'm sorry I keep having the tissue here. It's, I have a cold and all that. I have allergies, runny nose, and all that. So, I apologize. Critically, Last Witch Hunter has only a 16% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So, the film did not do very well. I'm going to briefly touch on the latest Bond film, Spectre. It got a release in the United Kingdom October 26th, but I consider it a November movie because it's coming out in the States November 6th. Actually, it came out a couple days ago, November 6th. I'm doing this video November 8th. So I'm going to be talking about Spectre November 8th. In November. So once the end of November hits... and I talk about the November films, I will be talking about Spectre. And I'm going to go see Spectre probably this weekend. Couldn't see it opening weekend because I was busy with work and all that. But I will definitely be seeing it second weekend. Couple more movies to talk about. Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. I've heard about the film. You know, it's a horror comedy type film. About these different zombies that team up together to prevent an apocalypse, I believe, anyway. The reception for it has not been great. 38% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The money it's made has not been great. $15 million budget and a $5.5 million box office total. It's still out. I mean, it's still out in theaters, so it'll probably go above 15 million, but so far, not great numbers. But it's still in theatrical release. And the last movie I'm going to talk about is a movie with one of my favorite female actresses of all time, and that would be Sandra Bullock. And her new movie, Our Brand is Crisis. It's a comedy, drama, political film. It's about these two candidates that face off. These two campaign managers who face off against each other. These two rival campaign managers, they face off against each other in a Bolivian election, a Bolivian presidential election, with their separate candidates. Sandra Bullock is in this movie. Billy Bob Thornton is in this movie. Anthony Mackie, and a few other people as well. It is not done very well at all. It's a box office bomb. $28 million budget, $6 million box office, and critically only a 31% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Well, I've heard a lot of people say that Sandra Bullock is not the issue in this movie, that she does a great job with the film, but just I haven't heard great things about the film. So that is that movie, and that's it for the movies in October that I'm going to be talking about. And I believe I talked about The Martian already. If I did, don't know. Excuse me. No, I did not talk about The Martian yet, and I'm going to talk about that right now. The Martian was a big time. Has been a big success. It came out October 2nd, wide release. Matt Damon is the star of the film. Jessica Chastain, Kristen Wiig, Jeff Daniels, Sean Bean. A lot of big talent names in this film. And it's directed by Ridley Scott, who's a very famous director. I mean, he directed the Aliens movie in the 80s. Directed a lot of other films. Thelma and Louise is another one. And a few others as well. A lot of people are saying that this is a return to form for Ridley Scott, whose last few films have not been great. The Counselor, which I actually thought was okay. I have watched that one before. I thought it was okay. Exodus, Gods and Kings, which was a failure. Prometheus has very mixed reviews. So those are a few of his other films he did recently that haven't done great. But they're saying this is a return to form for Ridley Scott. They're saying Matt Damon's great in the film. Overall, $108 million budget, $458.5 million. A huge success. You gotta think, I mean, it's definitely a huge success. And it's, in the 5 weeks that it's been out so far, it's hit number 1 in 4 of the 5 weeks. I think it was number 2 in the second week. Or in one of the lone week. It wasn't number 1. Critically, the movie, let's see, got a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, 93%. Ridley Scott, Matt Damon made a great pair. And this movie was a big hit. So, that is it for the October movies now. Now I'm going to kind of get into the November films. You have the Peanuts movie. The Peanuts movie's coming out, based on the comic strip and the holiday specials and all that. You know, I remember watching the Peanuts. I think I've watched the Christmas special. I think I watched the Halloween and the Thanksgiving special. I think they had those 3, and probably a couple more. Maybe there was a Valentine's Day, I'm not sure, but the Peanuts movie is an animated film, and it just came out, actually, November 6th. I mentioned Spectre, off the success. I mean, it comes off, it is the movie following Skyfall, which is, Skyfall was an amazing Bond movie. It was so good. So I'm really hoping the same, or somewhat the same, for Spectre. It doesn't have to be as good as Skyfall, but I'm hoping good things about the movie. I'm hoping the movie's good. There's another movie that's coming out November 13th, and that is the film By the Sea. This movie is very significant because it is the second pairing of Brangelina, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. You may remember they had another pairing before in 2005 with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I thought was a good movie. I have watched the film. So they go with their second pairing, and it is directed by Angelina Jolie, who has done a lot of directing now in recent years. So By the Sea is coming out. We have a romantic comedy, Love the Coopers, which has an all-star cast. John Goodman, Diane Keaton, Amanda Seyfried, Alan Arkin, Olivia Wilde, Ed Helms, Marissa Tomei. But there have been romantic comedies before that have failed miserably. Like, there was a 2013 comedy called The Big Wedding. I think it also had Diane Keaton. It had Robert De Niro. It had Robin Williams. It had Katherine Heigl. But that movie failed miserably. So there's no guarantee that Love the Coopers is going to be a success or not. November 20th, we have the final Hunger Games movie, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, the final film in the Hunger Games series. I watched the previous three. I loved all three of them. You know, I really liked the first one. I liked the second one. I really liked the first part of Mockingjay. So Part 2 is coming. I cannot wait for it. It's one of my anticipated movies of the year. November 20th as well, a movie called The Night Before is coming out, and it is the latest Seth Rogen comedy. And it is a reuniting of Seth Rogen and Joseph Gordon-Levitt from the movie. They did a movie together in 2011 called 50-50. That was a movie, I believe, about cancer. This movie is going to... I think it's like they're reuniting for Christmas. These three friends reunite for Christmas. They do something dumb every single year or something like that, and this is like their last Christmas together until they enter adulthood, basically. You know. But The Night Before, that is one I'm looking forward to a lot. Secret in Their Eyes, coming out November 20th. This is a smaller film, but it's got an all-star cast. Julia Roberts, widely considered one of the greatest actresses of our generation. Nicole Kidman, same could be said for her. Chiwetel Ejiofor, a name that's gotten a lot of recognition these days. So Secret in Their Eyes is a crime thriller, and it is a movie that maybe I probably won't see in theaters, but maybe sometime on cable or something like that. We get to the week of October 25th, the weekend of November 25th, rather, and we get to Creed. Creed is a movie that I've been kind of looking forward to. It is a spin-off of the Rocky movies, the 6 Rocky films. So Creed is... This is the story about Apollo Creed's son, who gets a chance to box and box his way to glory. And so Creed is the spin-off to Rocky. That's a movie I'm looking forward to. Also, October 25th, The Good Dinosaur is coming out, the latest Pixar film. The second Pixar film coming out this year. If you remember, back in, I can't remember what month it was, but it was like June or July, Inside Out came out. And Inside Out was a huge success. This is the first year, actually, in the history of Pixar that they've had 2 films in the same year. The Good Dinosaur is the second film coming out. It's not as highly regarded as it's not as highly anticipated as Inside Out, but being that it's a Pixar movie, it'll probably do really good. And then the other film that I'm going to talk about is Victor Frankenstein, which is yet another take on Frankenstein. But it's actually more of a take on Dr. Frankenstein's assistant, whose name is Igor, I believe, who's got a hunched back, something like that. Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame is in this movie. James McAvoy, a guy who you may have heard a lot. I think he's in the X-Men movies now. But Victor Frankenstein's coming out November 25th. And it's a horror film as well. So those are... Actually, you'd think that Victor Frankenstein movie would have come out last month. But it's coming out November 25th, towards Thanksgiving. So that is it for the October releases and previewing the upcoming November releases. So that's it for this video. D-Rock 1992 out.